Hey folks, I'm the Amazing Vito, and you're watching the Amazing Vito show. Is that weird? And I'm talking to the one and only Mr. Lou Eisen. Thank you, Lou. I worked with Lou.
Thank you.
Lou's a very funny stand-up comic that I worked with a while ago. And one thing Lou is, and I want to get this right, Lou is a boxing historian, and he's appeared in several movies. One that I absolutely love is Cinderella Man with Russel Crowe. Lou was in that, and he also here's a few. This like when Lou sent me his like the bio. I swear to you, it was 2 pages. Okay, and I'm not going to cover the whole thing, or else there's no point in the. All right, so he's a member of a selected International Boxing Hall of Fame,
On the
the
selection committee.
the committee.
Yeah.
He has written for several boxing magazines as a writer and a contributor. Okay, and where is he? And he has a new book that's titled "Boxing's Greatest Controversies," which I, I love controversies. As a comic, we all like to hear, "Hey, what happened?" But Lou has like before we even started, we were talking about the Ali Liston fight, about that controversy, and Lou said some stuff that I had no idea about how why Ali took him out and how Dundee told Ali how to take him out. So, anyways, Lou, thank you so much for this. You
My
you
pleasure.
you
Thank you.
are a very funny man, and
Thank you. Me too.
I had no idea that you knew. Uh, uh, I knew you knew boxing, but I had no idea you were a contributor, a writer. You know all the ins and outs.
Right. My first love. When I was I guess 73, 72, 73, I went down to Maple Leaf Gardens when Clyde Gray challenged from for the he's Canadian for the world welterweight title, and champion was um, Angelo's fighter. And
Dundee.
yes, he was Jose Napoli's Mantequilla, they called him. Originally from Cuba, lived in Mexico, smooth as butter. So I watched the fight, and Napoli's won. And after the fight, I went up to speak to Angelo, and I was 13, and I showed him my boxing stance, and I was boxing. He said, "Are you a good boxer?" I said, "I'm pretty good." He said, "Then you have to quit. Pretty good's not good enough. You got to be special." And then he said, "You want to meet the big guy?" Because the whole thing was being promoted, excuse me, by Muhammad. And he never called him Muhammad. He called him the big guy. And I said, "Sure." Muhammad came, and I looked up, and I just started to cry because I'm 13. I said, and Muhammad laughed, "I waited my whole life to meet you." And, in my bedroom at home, many of my friends had Playboy centerfolds. I just had photos of Ali everywhere,
Yeah, yeah.
and got to meet him and kept in touch throughout the years. And when Cinderella Man came along in 204, I hooked up with Angelo again and became extremely close. He was like a father to me. And for 2 months before we started filming, we sat in a gym downtown on Carlaw Street, the Toronto Movie Studios, which have been uh, changed into a boxing gym, and we watched old black and white films from the 30s and 40s of fights.
Oh,
And
no way.
yeah, and as one of my friends said, "You must have been in heaven," because I would do that anyways. But to sit with Angelo and discuss these guys and have Angelo, you know, tell me the ins and outs of all these guys. And I didn't know Angelo was fluent in Yiddish. He was an Italian from South Philly, but when he moved to New York, all the trainers were Jewish and they spoke Yiddish. They could speak English to each other. They spoke Yiddish. So I said, "How'd you pick it up?" And he said, "Well, I went to NYU." "Really?" He goes, "No, stupid. I didn't have time. I was a bucket boy. I did what my brother Chris said. I went to the gym and kept my mouth shut and listened. And then I picked it up piece by piece." So during the movie, he would read something in Yiddish, transliterate it into Italian, and from Italian into English. And he had great stories about fighters back then, but he also had wonderful stories about Muhammad and Ray Leonard. And he had a great comment about Thomas Hearns. He said, "If Thomas Hearns had balance, he would have never lost a single fight in his life. And he said this to his friend Emmanuel Stewart, who trained Thomas Hearns. And Emmanuel Stewart said, Angelo, I've had Tommy since he was 12. I've been teaching him balance for 20 years. He hasn't picked it up. He'll never pick it up.
And
And
we're gonna watch the Thomas Hearns when I watched this fight. It was in 1985. It was one of the first fights that I love Marvin Hagler. That was my guy. So Marvelous. He was just beautiful and a stud. So when I saw him fight and just that, and I knew what a badass Hearns was. So, and he was known as the Cobra. He had a physique on him. He
oh
looked like a
yeah,
cobra. So, his style of boxing, was it called Gronk?
Kronk from the Kronk gym. But what he wanted to do, he told me, because he was taller than Hagler. He was 6'1". Hagler was like 5'8", 5'9", I think actually. And he had longer arms. He wanted to box him. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the plan. Keep him on the end of your jab. And when he comes in, hit him with the right hand. Problem was, Hagler didn't let him do that. Hagler got on him right away. And Tommy said to me, I had no choice but to fight him toe to toe. And you don't want to fight Marvin Hagler toe to toe because you're not going to hurt him. And he's tremendously strong. Most guys, when they train for a fight, will train 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Hagler would train 6 months.
Yeah.
He would
Yeah.
get into an angry, nasty mood, and he would hate everything.
Well,
By the time
didn't
the
it,
fight came around, he just wanted to kill the person.
yeah, well, didn't he, his thing was, which was, I didn't know this, but if you got a big fight coming up, and I'm not a boxer, but what the boxers will do, they'll go train at a higher altitude, whatever, just so to
With
prepare.
their stamina.
Yeah. So what Hagler did, he would, I guess, rent out this piece of crap up, like, house, uh garbage house, no heat, nothing. And he would
That's
tell
what he wanted.
himself mentally that the guy that I'm fighting did this to me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm in this shithole because of that guy. So when I get in that ring, I'm gonna, F him up. So that is something I didn't know. And it's psychologically, if you think about that, incredibly smart guy to do that.
Well, very
Just,
smart guy. He also was brought up rough. And by
yeah.
that, I mean, in boxing, when he started, um, he's originally born in Brooklyn, moved to Brockton with his mother. And then after the riots in 68, and then when his career started, he started fighting in Philly. And Philly has produced more great fighters than probably any city or country ever, especially middleweights. And so,
Joe, Smoking Joe.
right, Smoke and Joe, a lot of great fighters from there. And so what happens is, instead of fighting guys that have 20 fights, maybe 10 wins, 10 losses, he's fighting guys that are 35-0 with 34 knockouts right from the beginning. So he's thrown into the deep end and he's beating them. There were two fights he had, Bobby Boogaloo Watts and Willie the Worm Monroe, who he beat, and the promoter apologized to him because they were hometown decisions. And he was so angry in the rematch, he took them both out in a round each.
Yeah.
And he wasn't there he said, I'm not here to beat him. I'm here to kill him. He's never going to fight again. If he doesn't leave in a coffin, it doesn't count.
Yeah, and he was
And he
serious.
meant that.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was serious. Like, boxing for me, I'm not a big UFC fighter guy. I don't,
Neither am I. Yeah.
it's just not, how boxing for me was, my uncle would put me on his lap and we would watch Ali fights, and my uncle would explain to me, this is what I, in Italian, he would talk to me, and I was just, it's the first time when you watch something and you really watch it, you're just stunned at, these guys are really, I mean, back then, I hate to say it, but
Talented,
they pounded, and it was
especially
unbelievable.
heavyweights.
Yeah, so it was
Ali
just,
was Ali was the toughest of all of them. He never gets credit for that. But he
Yeah,
stood
yeah,
and took the best shots of all of them, and he still was there. At its highest level, it's an art form. It's a brutal, exploitative sport. But when you get an Ali or a Willie Pep, featherweight champion, someone in there, Sugar Ray Robinson, Sugar Ray Leonard, these are people that made it an art form. And Angelo Dundee would tell me at his gym, the Fifth Street Gym, which I visited, he'd get guys all the time who come in and say, "I want to be a boxer." Okay, I want to fight somebody. He said, just first of all, take your shoes off, just get in the ring, dance around. And he said, after 30 seconds to a minute, they're exhausted. And he would always say, now imagine trying to do that with someone else trying to cave your face in.
yeah.
Yeah, where if you make one mistake, you're going to get your nose broken or your cheekbone broken. And he said, it's a very difficult sport. And for all great boxers, except for Julio Cesar Chavez, you need a really deep, good amateur pedigree. And Hagler had that. Hearns had that. Tyson Fury had that. Deontay Wilder didn't have that.
Yeah, that's
You know,
something I
he went
wanted.
to the Olympics, but he didn't have a deep, long amateur pedigree. Whereas Lennox Lewis was fighting amateur from the age of 12 on.
Yeah.
And won an amateur title, world title, Olympic title, and undisputed world heavyweight champion.
Yeah, this is something that I heard about Hagler, where he would okay, he was the first boxer in history that when he did win his title, he couldn't celebrate it in the ring
Right,
because
true.
they were rioting and they were
Yeah.
so they wanted to kill him, and the poor guy never got to. One of the privileges of when you win a world, when you win a world championship, one of the privileges you get is when they put that belt around you on that ring, that's your time. So
Right,
if
you're the best on earth.
it's the same thing as a stand-up. That's your time on stage. Nobody could take that from you. That's your privilege. Okay.
Right.
So he had that privilege taken away from him.
In Britain,
Yeah.
at Wembley Arena, because what happened was he'd fought a guy named Vito Antuofermo. And Vito was in The Godfather movie, nice guy.
Yeah.
And Vito, I've spent a lot of time with him at the Hall of Fame in Canastota, New York. And once he borrowed my glasses. And he said, "Hey, these are great. I can see a lot better."
He's a character.
Yeah. I said, "Hey, can I have them back?" He said, "Why? You want to fight for him?" I said, "Vito, you could miss me and knock me out." And he said, "Really? You're going to make me?" And he said, "I'm just kidding you." But Vito fought Hagler. Hagler beat him.
Yeah.
Pitched a shutout. But in Vegas, where anything can happen, they called it a draw. And Hagler couldn't believe it. And the announcers couldn't believe it. So he fights on, and then he gets a chance at Alan Minter. Alan Minter beats Antuofermo, stops him on cuts in 4 or 5 rounds. So they go to Britain, and Hagler's trainers and managers, the Petronelli brothers, said, "Listen, you're not going to win a decision here. You could knock him down every round, and when the fight's over, you got 15 knockdowns. You're not going to win. You have to knock him out." And so Hagler's in the ring. And when the bell rings, he's like, "I'm not going to box him. I'm going to jump on him and just beat the crap out of him." And he does. He pounds him in the first round, second round. And in the third round, he opens a cut over both of Minter's eyes. And Minter's there, and he's getting hit with 6 punch combinations where his head's like a tetherball.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the referee stops it and goes, "This is a slaughter." At which point, hundreds of beer bottles come flying in the ring. Hagler had to go under the canvas with his trainers and with the police, and they had to wait 40 minutes till they got a 200 more policemen and rushed him from under the canvas into the safety of the dressing room, where bottles still hit his head in that, but he was never given the belt. And there lied the genesis of his loss to Ray Leonard. He was so angry at the Brits that when he defended against Leonard, he didn't want one of the judges. He could refuse one, and he refused Terry Gibbs. Terry Gibbs was a British judge. So Gibbs was replaced by Jojo Guerra, a Mexican judge who had no qualifications for a title fight. So when the fight's over, one judge has it 117, 115 Leonard, the other 117, 115 Hagler, and Joe Garrett had it 118, 110. He gave Hagler a round. So it was pathetic. And Terry Gibbs, who they didn't want, scored it for HBO from England, and he had it Hagler 120, Leonard 116. If he had kept the original British judge, he would have retained his title. With the Hearnes fight, this was all an effort for him to get more money, because when Ray Leonard had his debut, he got 50 grand for fighting Jose Vega, whereas Hagler got $40 for his professional debut. And Hagler was moving up the ladder, but they just weren't going to pay him money. And he kept getting shortchanged. So he fights Mustafa Hamsho, and he destroys him. They fight twice. And in the first fight, Ray Leonard's on the broadcast team. And somebody said, well, Hamsho, who's pouring blood, said, Hamsho's got guts. And Leonard had the great line, guts gets you killed in boxing, smart wins your fights. And then he fights Hamsho, fights Duran. And the Duran fight was even until the last round when Hagler pulled it out. Then he fights Hamsho again and takes him out in 3 rounds. And then he fights Hearns. Mm-hmm. And after about a week, it's supposed to be a 6-month PR tour, publicity tour before the fight. He won't do it. He's there for 3 days and he's like, nah, I'm not going to sit there. I want to kill the man. I'm not going to sit and pretend I like him. I don't like him. And it was all an attempt to get Ray Leonard in the $1 million fight. And he trained, and Hagler trained. They watched films of each other. They analyzed. And Emmanuel Stewart said, listen, you can't square up. You can't just face him head on because he's too strong. And you have to use your jab. You got to give him angles. You got to move. You got to keep circling him, forcing him to reset. So because in order to punch, you have to have your feet planted. And to force Hagler to keep resetting would take away his punching power. So Hearns said the bell rings, the fight starts, and within 2 seconds, he's already on me. I can't get him off. I literally can't. He said, even when I run backwards and start shooting out my jabs, he walks right through them and he's on top of me. Yeah. And everyone says to him, why did you slug it out with him? He said, I had no choice. I either slug it out or I lose in the first round. And he said, by the 3rd round, he said, I had nothing left. I was exhausted. He had to be carried back to the dressing room. Manuel Stewart told me he fought 15 rounds worth of boxing in 3 rounds. Yeah. And there was one point during the fight where Hearns hit him a great right hand. And for a split second, you see Hagler's knee wobble. The only time I ever saw that happen. Yeah. Just for a sec. And then they continue, and a bad cut over Hagler's eye. And they go to the Richard Steele calls time. They go to the doctor. Doctor says, can you see? And Hagler says, I ain't missing him, am I? And then Hagler goes back, and he's thinking to himself, he told me, they're going to stop the fight on me. They're going to rip me off again. So he says, now I'm just going to knock him out. And that's what he did. And Hagler was a converted southpaw. He wasn't a natural southpaw. He was turned southpaw. And, the punches that did the damage to Hearns were the left hand.
When you say converted southpaw, what do you mean converted southpaw? So
he wasn't a natural left-hander. Okay. They turned him into a left-hander because his jab was potent and he had a good left hook. And they wanted him, if you're an orthodox or if you're a southpaw, it's very difficult for an orthodox fighter to fight a southpaw because everything's different. You're expecting the jab to come from the left hand and the power from the right. But with the southpaw, it's different. Most fighters are used to moving to the right. But when you fight a southpaw or a lefty, you got to move to your left out of range. The difference here was when Ray Leonard fought Hagler, Angelo Dundee smartly had a kid get Hagler's autograph. And when he came back, he said, what hand did he sign with? He said his right hand. And Angelo said, oh, so he's not a real southpaw then. So he said to Ray Leonard, don't move to your left away from his left because he wants you to get near his right hand. Move towards his left, force him.
And
And
who,
go ahead.
who do you think? See, for me, I thought when he fought Sugar Ray, which is a great, he's a great fighter, but I thought Hagler won that fight.
I thought Hagler won the fight, and I told him that. And I always thought it up until I wrote this book and I watched the fight. I mean, you've probably seen the fight 50 times, and I'm watching the fight again and again. And a friend of mine, another former comic, Wayne Termel, is a big boxing fan, lives in Vegas now. He's an author. And he said to me, he said, you know what, Lou, you know what the thing here is? And he had a good point. He said, you score by effective aggressiveness. So he said, just coming forward on your opponent without landing a punch isn't effective aggressiveness. He said Leonard was moving back, but he was still hitting him more often than Hagler hit him. And what Hagler was slow. He gave away the first 4 rounds because he fought orthodox. Ray Leonard was having a lot of problems with Southpaws in training camp. Why Hagler didn't fight Southpaw in the beginning, we don't know. Only Hagler can answer that. And what Ray did, and Angelo pointed this out to him, Hagler had a habit of when he was in a clinch or the referee broke the clinch up, he would move back 2 or 3 feet. Then he would sort of take a semicircle walk for 5 feet and hitch up his trunks. He was just buying time. And Angelo said to Ray Leonard, don't let him do that. Whack him. So when he tried it the first time, he's got his hands down here to hitch his trunks up. Ray went over and hit him 4 or 5 times. And he kept doing that. And he said, you're physically the bigger man. Push him. Hit him with your elbows, use your shoulders. Don't let him know, And with Hagler, he had told Leonard about a year before when they met, he said to him, Hagler said, I can't do this anymore. My heart's not in it. The 6-month training camp where I don't see my family. There's no one left to beat. I'm done. I don't need the money. And Leonard knew it was the right time to challenge him. And it's one of the most controversial fights.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer because after the fight, Leonard said to him, and you can hear it on the tape, you won, you beat me fair and square. Thank you for the opportunity. And then when they announced Leonard, he said, well, I knew I had him when we signed for the fight, and I knew this. And Hagler's like, but you're not being honest. Just be honest. And Angelo said the fight was lost by Hagler's trainers and managers, Goody and Pat Petronelli. And they lost it because he said the only thing they wanted in the negotiations was a specific corner of the ring where Hagler could sit. They wanted they wanted the blue corner, not the red corner. Hagler wanted the blue corner. And they're fine. And what do you want? Well, we don't want a 15-round fight. We want 12 rounds. And we don't want a 20-foot ring. We want a 24-foot ring.
Yeah, that was a huge mistake.
Yeah, because as Angelo said, it saved us 9 more minutes of fighting, and it gave Ray a lot more room to maneuver. And during the fight, you can hear Hagler calling, you sissy, you faggot, why don't you fight? And Leonard smiled. And the thing is, the great Charlie Goldman, who trained Rocky Marciano and many other world champions, and who was an influence on Angelo, said, listen, never play a guy at his own game. No one invents a game just to be beaten at it. You fight your game. Make the other guy fight your game. There's no point in Leonard slugging it out, getting close. Much quicker than Hagler, but it only takes one good punch.
But what I didn't understand, Lou, is that I thought the rings were like a certain size for every fight. Like you weren't allowed to. So when I heard that, I just thought, how is that possible to allow that?
It's part of the discussions. 20-foot ring, 24-foot ring. When Ali fought Foreman, they wanted a 20-foot ring, 18-foot, and Angelo wanted 24-foot. And so what Angelo did was when they went to measure the ring, because Foreman's corner was upset, Angelo took 6 feet out of the ring and on each side, stitched it together, and they measured it, and it was 18 feet. And when they left, they had the people there stitch it back in.
Yeah.
And the job for the trainer is to help your fighter win. It's the question to beat a champion like Hagler. as you know, the standard is you got to beat the crap out of him, right, for the whole fight and knock him down. And Leonard didn't do that. He never hurt Hagler once. He never staggered him. He never had him in trouble. You know, Hagler, the fifth round staggered Leonard. And, you know, at the least you have to give, even if you're a Ray fan, you got to still give Hagler at least 6, 7, 8 rounds. And the judges, Ray was doing what Ali did. Flurry at the end of the round.
Yeah, he was stealing the round at the very end, which was very on.
Yeah, that's a 300-year-old trick, and that works. And he's stealing the rounds, and fans and judges are human, and they thought, well, Hagler's going to knock him out in a round or two. The fact that he was still there and winning parts of each round, they gave him a lot of credit for that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll cover that that fight one
but
day.
the Hearns one with Hagler is supposed to, you know, they consider it the greatest 3 rounds in the history of the sport.
Yes. But I wanted to just didn't Hagler have, somebody told me that Hagler had most people around their head. Hagler had a head on him that
it's a big head.
He had like they said that it was like a helmet, like his skull was like this helmet, that most people have a 1/4 inch, and he had twice or 3 times the size of what a normal man would have. So
yeah, I don't know if that's true or not, but Hagler could take a punch. Hagler was one of the few fighters I ever saw in a fight that would stand there with his hands at his hips and say, "Okay, go ahead."
Yeah, he was a tough man. Just absolutely, he was marvelous. And
yeah, he was.
I wanted to ask you about just what are your thoughts on before we start the Hagler fight with Hearns? Just a quick little. What did you think of Anthony Joshua and Ruiz? What did you think? What did you think of that?
Well, the first fight, I thought Joshua was overconfident. I thought he took Ruiz too lightly. He didn't realize or didn't accept the fact that Ruiz could still punch. And everyone said that. Ruiz comes in, Andy Ruiz looks fat. He is fat. And he's not your typical boxer's physique, but he can punch like a mule kick. And he came in, and, you know, the first knockdown was scored by Joshua, and you can see when Ruiz went down and he shook his head, he was like, okay, well, my corner was wrong. I shouldn't try to box him. He's taller and with longer arms. My only chance is to do what I do best, slug.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes back and he starts slugging, and you can see some of the first shots he lands, and he's starting to really buzz Joshua. Joshua's hurt. And then when he dropped him the first time, you can see Ruiz's eyes saying, he's mine.
Yeah, well, he hit Joshua here
in the temple.
To get hit, and he never recovered after that.
No, what happens is I remember this goes back 40 years, but Marvis Frazier was fighting. I think it was an amateur fight against Tony Tubbs. Tubbs hit him like high on the temple. Frazier couldn't move. Like later on, when after they counted to 10, can you roll over? I can't move. I can barely breathe. And on the weekend, we saw Oscar Valdez knock out Miguel Berchelt for junior lightweight title, hit him on the temple, and he just went like this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened in that instance. You get hit in the temple, you're done. That's the worst place to get hit. Your whole body freezes, and you're finished.
Yeah, essentially, your body is not your
brain is not functioning.
Yeah, you want to, you know, you could just tell, like, you want to do something, but you can't.
No.
And it's like a dream state you're in.
Your body,
I've had my bell rung, and it's this weird feeling of I see everything around me. I understand what's going on, but my body's not. I'm telling to move, but it's not moving the right way.
Right, your brain's been short-circuited.
Yeah, and it's terrifying.
Yeah,
It's
it's very terrifying.
especially when you have somebody that wants to kill you. You could only imagine that you're in serious, serious trouble. So
Right, and as Angelo Dundee would say, these aren't kids. These are heavyweights. It takes one punch to take a man's life. He said anyone over 200 pounds can hurt you even abroad, which I
yeah,
thought was very funny. So he rears landed that shot, and as you said, Joshua never recovered.
mhm.
He never had his legs under him, as you could see, and his eyes were having trouble focusing.
Yeah,
And when a fighter smiles like that and shakes his head, he's in trouble.
yeah. It's that kind of. I think you do that. I've seen that many times where you smile.
Yeah,
Like, come on, buddy, let's go. But inside, you're sitting there going, I messed up, and
yeah.
you're trying to act.
You're trying to act and dissuade him from coming forward.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, I would love to cover that one. And the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder. What did you think of that? Uh,
Well, I like both. I thought Fury won the first fight, even though he got dropped twice. I thought the rounds he won, he really controlled Wilder, and he showed Wilder for all the shortcomings he had. I think in the second fight, because Fury was so upset that he got a draw when he clearly won, and knowing that in the state, Americans, I've said this to American boxing writers and historians, as a Canadian, we don't really care whether you give us credit or not. We don't need your credit. Jimmy McClartin was the welterweight champion. Lennox Lewis was the best of his era. Doesn't matter what you guys think or say. Well, he beat Mike Tyson. Well, Tyson was old. Well, you know what? Tyson was in prison before. Not Lennox Lewis's fault. You only fight a guy when you fight him. Fury in the second fight didn't want any doubt. He just thought when the bell rings, I'm 6'9", 267. I'm just going to come out and beat the crap out of this guy. And he did. He came out, and from the get-go, Wilder's good. Wilder telegraphs his punches. He's got that one right hand, and that's all he throws. So if you're an experienced fighter, just to avoid that right hand. But Wilder doesn't have the technical ability to know what to do and to be able to adapt in the situation. So Fury's on the whole time. Wilder doesn't know what to do. All he does is keep throwing the right hand, and he keeps getting countered. And Fury keeps hitting Wilder and keeps pounding him, knocks him down. Mark Breland, who was Wilder's trainer, is probably, Vito, I would say, without a doubt, the most well-loved person in boxing.
yes, he is. He is.
You know
Yeah.
what? If I introduced you to him and you spoke to him for 5 minutes, when he said goodbye, he would hug you and give you a kiss. That's how nice he is. He's just a classy guy. He loves people. And he cared about Deontay, and he stopped the fight because Deontay had been knocked down. His eyes weren't focused. That's the main thing Angelo Dundee taught me. When the trainer or the referee is looking at you, you have to focus your eyes. Wilder's eyes he wasn't able to focus them. His legs were rubbery. If he kept fighting, he could have got seriously hurt. Breland did the right thing. The only fighter that I can think, very few fighters, but one, the most famous, who would admit he would lose when he lost, was Ali. He never made an excuse. Third Norton fight, they give it to Ali, but Ali said at the press conference, I didn't win that fight. It was nice of the judges to give it to me, but Kenny here won the fight, obviously. Everyone knows that. And Wilder blamed Breland. He blamed everyone.
Oh, but Breland, a lot of people don't know about Breland. He was a hell of a fighter.
The world champion. And he was also a dominant world champion amateur fighter and Olympic gold medalist. And he knows his boxing. And he stopped it at the right time. And Wilder blamed everyone except himself.
Yeah, and it wasn't. He also did it in 2 weight classes. So,
yeah, welter and junior middle.
Yeah. So he and Wilder did it. It was really weird. Like I guess when you never lose, okay,
Right.
and then you lose for the first time, you cannot sit there and say it was on me. Yeah.
Right. Your brain can't accept this.
Yeah.
Foreman had the same problem when Ali beat him because he said, I'd never lost. I'd never lost an amateur or professional fight. I destroyed people. So
Yeah.
George Foreman said to me, he said, every excuse. My water was poisoned. The ropes were loose. The canvas was soft. You had a voodoo doctor put a spell on me.
Yes.
They blinded me with lights. They poisoned my food. They did this. He said it took him over 20 years. He woke up in bed one night and said to his wife, "You know what? Muhammad beat me, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm friends with him. I love him like he's my brother. Nothing wrong with losing to Muhammad Ali, the greatest athlete ever."
And to see him change from he was when I was a kid, I remember seeing his fights when he was when Foreman was he's still people forget like he
He
was
was
such a badass. Like
he
he
was
was
a
a
badass, and
he
he
was a
was the hardest puncher. And
he looked he looked like he hated everybody, Lou.
oh, and he did. And I asked him one. I love him. So I watched Ali knock him out at a closed circuit at Maple Leaf Gardens. Now Ali was the world to me, so I picked Ali, and I told everyone in school, and of course, crazy Louis stupid. Foreman's going to kill him, and I just thought, but Ali wouldn't fight someone that he couldn't beat. And Ali had the great comment: black people don't look at black people the same way white people do. He said to a white guy, Foreman's a big
Say
bad
that again. Sorry.
monster.
Say that again.
He said, black people aren't afraid of black people the same way white people are afraid of black people. He said to a white guy, George Foreman's some big bad ugly monster that goes around stomping on buildings and killing people.
A gorilla.
Yeah, that was Frazier, but yeah. And
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. He said Foreman's like the mummy,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that great line by Richard Pryor, Foreman gets in the ring and says, "Tell me which one's the referee, because I'm gonna kill the other motherfucker." And so
yeah.
and then
yeah,
he said,
that Richard Pryor. Oh man, that was fun. Yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah.
So Ali said, but to a black guy, Foreman's just another guy from the ghetto.
Right.
He said, everyone say, look how big he is. He's 6'3". Ali said, I'm 6'3 and 3/4. He's 222 pounds. Ali said, I'm 225 pounds. And I've got more experience. And I'm not going to be afraid of him. And he said, I'm going to beat him for one reason. He punches around. You can't beat a guy like me by punching around. And he said, also, Foreman's fights go 1 or 2 rounds. He's never looked up and seen round 8, round 10. He said, his parachute won't open. I'm telling you right now. And Ali was right. And Foreman tried to punch himself out. Of course, as you said, Foreman now is one of the most beloved people on the earth.
He's a sweetheart of a man.
Yeah, I always tell him I love him when I talk to him or I see him. He knows how much, But I asked him, I said, when you knocked out Ken Norton, and Norton's getting up, and his trainers are holding him up, they stop the fight, and he's just lying against the ropes, you walked up and said something to him. What did you say? And he said, I'm ashamed.
Well, I'm ashamed.
He said, I'm ashamed of what I said to him. I just said, I want you to know I did this to you. I fucked you up.
Oh, okay.
And he said, and I apologize to him every day forever after.
Yeah, yeah.
And Norton would say, George, I genuinely love you. You don't have to apologize anymore. You're a great
Isn't that
captain.
beautiful? Like these guys get in the ring and people have no idea.
It's not personal.
Yeah, but with the fight I'm going to queue up in a minute, it was very personal,
right?
Between the two. And that's when it gets dangerous,
right? And the thing about Ali was, when they interviewed Norton after the second fight with Ali, the rematch where Ali won, he didn't complain. And at the end of his career, when his career was over, he said, "You always liked Ali." He said, "I loved Ali, and I still love him very much." He said, "You have to remember something. First time I fought him and won in an upset, I was getting $400 a fight. I was broke. I was living in a shelter with my son, and my father wouldn't take us in because he said, if you come in now, you'll never be able to stand on your own feet." So to fight Ali and to get 300 grand, I mean, that's the jackpot.
Yeah.
And also, when the careers were over, Ali was giving a speech in New York. In San Diego, Norton's car veered off the freeway. It wasn't his fault. Fell over the embankment. Norton had a broken skull, broken neck, broken legs, everything. Much worse than what Tiger Woods has happened in the last day or so. And he recovered, but his speech was slurred. But he said, I rushed to the hospital by helicopter. I fall asleep. I wake up, And the next morning, there's Ali crying, holding my hand, telling me he loves me. He
Yeah.
was in a meeting in New York. Someone had told him this. He left the meeting, chartered an airplane on his own pocket, and flew to San Diego to hold my hand.
Yeah.
That was Ali. And these guys were all friends. Um, Ali and Foreman were friends. And Angelo Dundee trained Foreman in his comeback. So,
Well, it's all business, but
yeah, it's purely business.
I
And
think fighters have such uh a bit, they don't want to show it, but most guys have a big heart. I remember seeing, I can't remember the fighter, but I remember he knocked out um a fighter, and he wasn't recovering, and they were coming in and doing interviews with the fighter, and he couldn't speak English that well. He had a translator, and he kept looking over his shoulder and looking at the guy he just knocked out, because there were paramedics in there and everything. And he just burst into tears. And the
right,
guy,
you don't want to.
yeah, the announcer said, "What's wrong?" And the guy that was translating said, "He's just very worried about the fighter he just knocked out. He's very upset about it." And they ended the conversation there, because he couldn't speak anymore, because people are cheering. Think about this. People are cheering when you're knocking the shit out of somebody, and when a person goes down, they're the reason why they've gone down, their brain just shut off for a second. So they hit
Right.
the canvas. That's serious. Okay.
Yeah.
So a fighter knows that, and a person with a good heart, and most boxers do have a good heart. Okay. Some don't. Well, that could be a totally different conversation. But to do that to another man, and to feel, uh, I did this. It was like Roberto Duran, when the famous fighter, he was laying in his deathbed. He had AIDS, and
Esteban De Jesus
yes, and he went and
and
hugged,
hugged him. Yeah,
you
because
know,
they fought 3 times and they loved each other. And he kept saying, you can beat this. You're a world champion."
yeah,
And when Alexis Arguello knocked out Ray Mancini in Mancini's first challenge for the lightweight title, you remember after the fight, he held Mancini's head in his hand
yes,
and said,
yes,
"I love you,
yes,
Ray. You're a great fighter. You'll be champion, and I'm going to help train you." And he did help train him. He did come to his training camp and got in the ring with him, and he showed him these tricks and different things to do. And when he fought Art Frias, Ray knocked him out, and no one cheered louder. No one cheered louder than Arguello. And we saw that several weeks ago when Richard Comey fought, knocked a guy out, and Teofimo Lopez got in the ring, was kissing him and hugging him. And Lopez had just knocked him out a year before in a round or in 2 rounds. So, Lopez said, but it's not personal. Richard and I have known each other for 10 years. We love each other. It's a fight. Valdez, when he fought Burchell, you guys had grown up together. Right. You lived on the same street. Right. We're brothers. We walk into each other's house. He has a key to my house and my parents' house, and I have a key to his parents' house. And when he knocked Burchell out, Burchell fell face first. And he didn't get up for a long time. It was scary. But later on, you can see him talking to Burchell, and Valdez is just pouring tears. And he kept saying, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to hurt you." And Burchell said, "You're the better man. You win." It's a living.
yeah,
It's what you do. Only when you make it personal, like when Tyson fought Buster Douglas, and he started to insult Douglas's mother, who had
yeah.
just died,
Just died. Yes.
and Douglas just went, you know, "That's it. I don't even care about what's
Yeah,
happening."
that fight alone, I watch that at least a couple times a year, just to, because sometimes you go, do you know do miracles happen? Do I love when the unexpected happens?
That's
You
what
know,
boxing is. It's the theater of the unexpected.
yes, and Lou, real quick before I start the fight, um, why do they call it the sweet science?
Sweet science was a term that was adopted by A.J. Liebling, a Jewish boxing writer from New York, and I guess he wrote it in the 1920s or 30s. He said people just thought they've been trying to ban it for 300-400 years, and he just said it's a science. Boxing's a science. It's the sweet science because guys like Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis do it, and it's so sweet. They're sweet like sugar. They're so perfect in form. And it's not. When I did Cinderella Man, one thing Ron Howard stressed was about the Rocky movies was he said they weren't realistic because you have guys throwing 800 punches around. He said that's not what boxing is, and he was right. Boxers stand there and they're looking for you to make a mistake, or they're trying to feint you out of position. They're not just throwing punches with their eyes closed. And there's very subtle things going on. It's a science. For instance, Angelo Dundee showed me how against a fighter, I made a comment, well, so-and-so is not going to stick his chin out willingly. And he said, yes, he will if you make him. How do you make him? He said, you hold your hands too high. He's going to lean over to jab your stomach. And when he does that, you take a step back and his chin's right there. So he said, short left hook on the button, fight's over. And I saw him do that with different fighters, and he was right. So there's all these feints and moves, and it's a science. It's an art form at its highest level. It's tough. It's brutal. You don't get hit if you don't make a mistake. But these guys are sweet scientists.
That's true. All right. So without further ado, folks, this is from 1985, April 15th. April 15th.
3 rounds ever.
This is this was better known as The War.
Yeah, so, the greatest 3 rounds in the history of boxing.
Yeah, so let's check it out.
Okay.
You see it? Hold on. Sorry.
No problem.
All right. There. Now it's full screen. All right. I got to put that copyright crap on there.
That's my friend Al Bernstein there. Great guy.
You know Al?
Yeah, very nice guy.
Do you want me to turn it up a little bit? Because I want to hear you.
Yeah, no problem. You don't have to turn it up.
Okay.
The Hearnes fight with Duran was a second round KO. He annihilated him.
Now watch the look. Okay, that's Duran. Okay, all right. Sorry. Okay, sorry. I just wanted to see something there.
Hagler can be very moody at times. You have to watch how you approach him.
Really?
Yeah, I asked him once after I'd first met him if I could take a photo, and he said no. And I said, no problem. I just don't like people coming up.
He made his money and he went to Italy and became a star.
A movie star, yeah. And I just said, no problem, sir. And so Angelo said the key to getting along with him is don't ask for anything because everyone wants something from them. And so I didn't. But later on, when I saw him later in the day, he said, if you want to take a picture now, you can. And I said,
he did?
Yeah, I said, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Whereas Ray Leonard's always in a good mood. That's Chuck Hall.
I'm gonna fast forward the national anthem. Do you mind?
No, not at all.
Okay. Okay, I love watching when they get okay. Look at Hagler.
Look, that's so intense. By the way, that's that guy on the black guy behind him is his half brother Robbie Sims.
Caesar's Palace.
Yeah. Bad hairpiece on Goody Petronelli there.
Oh, that was awful. Look at the physique on when Hearns takes his. Oh, it's Doc. It's the Doc from Carson.
Yes, there's a good book you can get by a late friend of mine, George Kimball, called The Four Kings, and it's about the fights between Thomas Hearns, Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, and Marvelous Marvin Hagler. And it's a wonderful book, and it shows Hagler when he had hair when he was really young. When he was posing for publicity photos, he didn't know how to stand. They had to show him how to hold his hands. He was
Look
so
how
good.
packed it is.
Leroy Neiman at ringside. Harry Gibbs was a very good referee, and that's the one he didn't want against.
I
Never
like
liked,
Richard Steele.
yeah, I never liked him for several reasons.
Why?
I thought he stopped the Meldrick Taylor fight too soon against Chavez. There were 2 seconds left. But more than that, Vito, a very dear friend of mine was the #1 featherweight in the world, Art Hafey. And he knocked out the immortal Ruben Olivares. In the rematch, it went 15 rounds. One judge had it 8-7 Olivares, the other had it 8-7 Hafey. Richard Steele had it 14 rounds Olivares, 1 round for Art Hafey. And when I said to Richard, I didn't vote for you to get into the hall because that's unforgivable.
Yeah, and
He
a lot of people don't.
was,
A lot
yeah.
of people, sorry, a lot of people don't know that you can get people. You are one of the judges to get people into the Hall of Fame.
Right. I'm on the old timers selection committee. That's what I prefer to do
Okay,
with fighters from the old days.
so Thomas Hearns from Detroit at this time, he was
Motor City Cobra, the Hitman.
yeah, the Cobra. Look at him, 6'1" and 159 pounds and 3/4. Like just
Yeah.
This guy was just chiseled.
And he won a world title at light heavyweight too. You know, he had the physique and he had that right slingshot right hand. Tough guy, very quiet but very kind. You know, if you say to him, "Can I have a photograph?" He's always absolutely.
Yeah, he would be no problem.
Yeah, always kind. You can always talk to him.
And so he's 2 inches taller.
He's actually, yeah,
Right?
yeah, yep. Well, he's more than that. He's 6'1". He's 5'9", so he's 5 inches taller. 4, excuse me.
That is a horrible hairpiece.
Yeah, it is. They both brothers had him.
Oh man. Watch the stare down. Look at this.
Yeah.
Get out of the way. Look at that.
Yeah.
Neither man blinked, and it was rock and roll time. Like, this was brutal, folks. This was brutal.
Right from the get-go. Hearns wanted to keep him at a distance. He just couldn't.
Look at that look. Look at that look. Like, let's go. Both men wanted to kill each other.
Yep. Hagler's attitude was, he's a welterweight coming up to get me. Who does he think he is? I'm not Duran. I'm not these other guys. I'm the middleweight champion. You know, and to get the other guy's respect, you got to be able to hurt him. And Hagler said, he can't hurt me. No one can hurt me.
Look at that. It's just.
And those are landing.
Yeah.
People thought, you know, are we going to see an upset now? He's really hitting Hagler. But look, he's fighting Southpaw. Moving, left hand. The problem right there for Hagler is he's not closing the distance. And at a distance, it's Hearns' fight. But
look at how close. They're you know, he's not giving Hearns
any breathing room.
Yeah.
No room to punch. He's closing the distance now. Hearns wants him to stay there. But he's not going to stay there. He's forcing Hearns to fight his fight. He's imposing his will on Hearns. Hearns doesn't have any time off. Hearns wasn't, you know, first rounds are usually feeling out rounds, but these guys are going at it like it's the 10th round.
That's the thing, Lou, that freaked me out when I saw this. I was like, what? Like, usually it's just first round. You're really, look at that. Like, first round, you're just feeling out the guy. And here it was just war.
Yeah, they were trying to take each other out with every punch. Low blow there by Hagler, but that's going to happen when the guy's got that much height on you. Hagler's catching some of those on his gloves and his arms. But you notice even when Hearns is landing full tilt, Hagler's still moving forward. And it's demoralizing when you hit a guy your best punch and he just smirks at you and comes forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that would suck. Look at that. Just insight. Look at that.
And Hagler's really working him over. Hearns, I guarantee you, is feeling those punches. And Hagler's using his shoulders and his arms to keep him there. And his feet, the way his
Well,
Hearns is fighting back. He's doing his best, but Hearns is almost already starting to tire.
what do you think that Hearns's corner is gonna like when they're watching this and you're his corner man? What are you thinking?
You're going crazy. Don't do this. Don't fight him like this. Tie him up when he gets inside. Push him. You're the bigger man. Put him in a headlock. Push him back.
Hold him.
Get close. Tie him up. Hold him. And then push him back. And then when he's back, hit him with a jab and a right hand. Don't let him get close to you. Because you're fighting his fight. And you look how long Hearns' arms are. So,
Yeah.
Hearns needs that room.
Yeah, Hearns looks like he could hit you from another room with those arms.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But yes. I mean, no one expected him to come out this.
No,
like
not
this.
at all.
And Hearns is already starting to get gassed there, but his legs are starting to go. But Hearns is not just attacking, he's fighting to keep Hagler off him from knocking him out.
Yeah, look at the look. Look at that look. Just let's go.
And Hagler's attitude is that was nothing. That's nothing. You don't know what it's going to be like because now I'm going to kick it up 10 notches. Now he's got that cut.
Yeah. This is where I was worried that they were going to. So his last loss was in 1976.
And that was a home decision to Willie the Worm Monroe in Philly. And 3 months later, he knocked him out in one round. And then fought him again and knocked him out in one round. Hagler was not a guy you wanted to rip off because when he got you again in the ring.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yes, exactly. But right now, the cut man, how important is a cut man?
Cut man's vitally important. Jose Napoli's lost his welterweight title to Billy Backus. And I said to Angelo, but you're the cut man for Napoli's. He said, that night I was with the big guy, with Muhammad, when Muhammad was fighting Jerry Corey. So I couldn't be with Napoli's. Next fight, when they have the rematch, same cut opens, but Angelo closed it immediately. And Napoli's, went on to beat Backus and re-win the world welterweight title. There's certain ways of dealing with it. You can put thrombin, which is like adrenaline on the cut to stop it. If it's a nose cut or cut your bleeding nose, there's the expression cut me to the quick. The trainer will stick his finger in the fighter's nose and press down on the vein known as the quick, and that can stop the bleeding. But right now he's putting probably Vaseline and a little bit of thrombin on it to stop the cut. But the problem was it's so high on the head and it's an open target for Hearns. Petronelli's were good. They just weren't the best, but then they had Hagler. So but at this point it speeds everything up because they're like Hagler's thinking they're going to look for an excuse to steal it from me. Right there for a brief sec, Hagler's right leg sort of twinged. Oh, that short right hand inside. You notice Hagler's shortening his punches up.
Mm-hmm.
Hearns can't because his arms are so long.
It immediately just came out and just.
So he's fighting him as a left-hander now. Make it more difficult for Hearns. Hearns is now circling to his own left to stay out of the way of Hagler's left. Comes back to Durham. it comes down to, if the skill of both fighters is equivalent, then who can impose their will on the other guy? And
Yes.
Hagler's doing that right now. Hagler knows, even if I don't land flush, I'm going to hurt him if I hit him on the arm, side of the head. He stepped on his foot there, which
Yeah.
is why he went back. Hagler's starting now to time Hearns' jab. Hearns just was not prepared. I don't think anyone would have been, to fight Hagler at this pace this early.
Well, that's the thing. Do you think Hearns thought he's just going to come out like a madman at me?
No, he thought Hagler would be more, would feel him out more.
Yeah.
And try to pick his shots more. He didn't expect Hagler to jump right on top of him. But Hagler had studied Hearns, and he thought, you can't let Hearns get into a groove. You can't let him get into that groove of the long jab and then this quick, straight slingshot right hand.
Right.
He said, so the only way to take that from him is to jump on him, take away his punching room. And that's what the strategy was. Get on top of Hearns, make him expend more energy than he wants to. Hearns is the one moving around and dancing all the time. Hagler's just doing what he's normally doing, and Hearns is getting tired. There's a left hand on the hip, and that hurts. And sooner or later, Hagler knows one of these shots is going to connect. Hearns' legs aren't even under him at this point. He's not putting his full weight behind the punches. His legs are a bit off. It's always different when you imagine how a fight's going to be, and then when you're in the ring with the guy.
Look, Lou, it's just been absolutely
ferocious.
Yes.
Look on Hagler's face. Look at that. 3 right hands in a row, another left hand, or 3 lefts in a row, another left hand, another left, left, right. All those shots are taking it out of Hearns.
Man, this fight makes me want to go out and beat the shit out of somebody. Not that I condone that. I'm just saying it just makes you very.
Yeah, it gets you worked up.
Yeah, it really does. Look.
But look at Hearns here. He's exhausted. Emmanuel Stewart saying to him, slow down. Take a deep breath. Box him. And Hearns is saying, I'm trying to box him. He's not giving me enough room. Hagler didn't give Hearns any respect.
Okay, now look at his face. He does not. He looks like I've given it, and this is not going to plan, guys.
Yeah, it's not going to plan. I can't fight better than I fought.
Yeah, that's not.
I can't hit him any cleaner than I've hit him.
Yeah, that's not a look of confidence.
No, he knows that there's 13 more rounds to go, and Hearns, who naturally tires towards the ends of the fight, I mean, he's tired there. He's gassed.
Look at that. Thrown. Like, people don't understand. Like, throw 61 punches. If you ever have a punching bag, throw 61 punches, like really throw them. Okay. And see how you feel.
And he's landed just under 50%, which is a high percentage.
Yeah.
But his punches aren't having an effect on Hagler. They're not hurting him. That's how you get the guy's respect.
Yeah, and that must play with you, just sitting there going, and here's Hagler. Hagler's like, just fix my eye, just fix the cut, and let's get going.
Hagler keeps leaning forward like, I want to get back in now. I don't want to wait till 1 minute.
Yeah.
And for the most part, he's calm. This is what I do. I destroy people.
That's why I love him.
He is the everyman. He fought for everyone who's ever been screwed over in their life. Everyone who ever got something, a victory, and had it stolen from them unjustly. Everyone who's been insulted by someone who they knew was inferior to them. And he's like, he's the guy. He's that guy. He's the everyman. He's getting it back for everyone who's ever been screwed over.
There's a reason why they call him Marvelous.
Yeah. Yeah, he legally changed his name to that.
He did.
But now he's fighting orthodox Hearns is dancing, but Hearns has trouble keeping his arms up. Those are arm punches. They're not going to do anything to Hagler. See there, he staggered Hearns without being hit. He's tired. And Hagler's punches are getting harder.
And this is where I remember watching this going, if they stop this fight now.
Oh, Hagler would have killed Richard Steele. That was the shot, I think, that left hand. Hagler's leaving, Hearns is leaving his feet to jab. He doesn't need to.
Yeah, he's trying everything in his power to keep distance. He wants distance.
And he can't get it. Hagler hit him
won't
both
give
a
it to
couple
him.
times. No, Hagler just is crowding him, taking away his punching room. Also, Hagler's not showing him respect. He's saying, you don't have the power. You may have knocked Duran out. That's
Here it is.
He's finished. He sensed the thing, and yeah.
And he's out, guys.
Yeah.
He's out. He's not getting up.
He's exhausted. It's like he's already fought 15 rounds.
Yeah, even
that was
got to stop
decision. It. Yeah, because he would have, could have been killed if they let it go on. He had nothing left.
Look at that. He is out, folks.
And look at that guy there has to carry him out of the ring, to the dressing room. As they say in boxing, victory has 1,000 fathers, but defeat is an orphan.
Yes.
Everyone is in Hagler's corner. All those people that doubted him, he said, I showed you.
Look at that.
Exhausted.
He couldn't walk.
Yeah. He was dehydrated from just those 3 rounds.
And think about how these guys, the workout regime that they would do to be that exhausted tells you something.
Would kill someone, yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, these are guys that are running, people say, well, 5 miles a day. No, they're running 10 miles a day, then 10 miles back.
Yeah.
So they're running 20 miles a day.
And watch this. Look how he sets them. Look. Boom. Man. That's what got him.
Yeah,
and
that
he's like, back. Big mistake.
Second one. He's ready right there.
Boom. There he's out. He's out. Yeah.
At the Hall of Fame induction for Hearns, when he made his speech, he said, I know Ray Leonard loves me. Do you love me, Marvin? And Marvin said, Thomas, you know I love you.
Did he?
Yeah, and he said, Thomas, who came to you when you signed to fight a heavyweight when you were in your mid-40s? I remember I came to your house and I said, what are you doing? You've got nothing left to prove. You're one of the greatest ever. Don't fight a heavyweight. If you need the money, I'll give you the money. Don't do this to yourself. It's got to end sometime. You have children. You have a life after it. You've proven that you're an all-time great. You have nothing left to prove, Thomas.
Yeah, and that's the problem with a lot of boxers. Boxing, it's like anything in life, especially in boxing and any, athlete. You don't quit. It quits you.
Right, and Ray Leonard never should have come. He beat Donnie Lalonde, and then Leonard, manager Mike Trainer, knew nothing about boxing. He wanted to get Leonard to fight Hearns in their, I think, 10th pro fight. And Angelo said, for 50 grand each, let them both win a version of the world welterweight title. They'll fight for 5 grand each. And so after that, Leonard didn't win. He got knocked out he lost to Terry Norris. He got knocked out by Camacho. He never should have had that fight. And he just, it was, Angelo was in his corner and really helped him. And it's the value of having a good trainer. But as you said, it's the value of knowing when to quit. And the thing about Ali, I just read this online because, there's a million people say to me, you should have your own boxing app or do something online. And I said, to compete with the other 2 million boxing apps online. And I said, a lot of them are by guys that are really, great writers and boxing historians. But people say, you know, Ali should have quit after the third Frazier fight, or Ali should have quit after the third Norton fight. They took 3.5 years of his life unjustly from him. They illegally took his title and his boxing license. He kept trying to gain that back. And Ali had no complaints after. Ali would, when I was with him one time, I gave him a look like, because it was in Angelo's condo in Florida, and he was sitting there like this, and he said, "Me, I don't feel sorry for me, so you shouldn't either." And he didn't. And Larry Merchant told me a great story. He said, if somebody had come to Ali in the 1950s and said, "Here's the deal. You can grow up in the South in the 50s. You know, you barely passed high school." And he would have got a job as a garbage man or something. Or you can be the most famous athlete ever to have lived, but you end up with Parkinson's. And he said he would have taken the deal. Because as a young black in the South in the 50s, what choice did he have? And Ali never felt sorry for himself, and he was never bitter at the government. Hagler remained bitter after the Leonard fight because he felt he got jobbed. And he said, but I got him back. And I said, how? And when Leonard would always had retired several times and say, well, I wouldn't mind fighting Hagler. And every time they have a press conference, Leonard would say, nah, I'm going to stay retired. So he offered Hagler something like 30 million to fight him, 35 million. And Hagler said, I'll think about it. And then Hagler called a big press conference about a year later. And Ray Leonard showed up and everyone showed up. And he said, you know, Ray's gentleman enough to offer me 30 million, 35 million. And boy, that's a great deal. Gets my juices going. And I know this time that if we get the right judges and, you know, I can beat him. But I'd rather stay retired. And he said his joy was stringing Sugar Ray along for a couple of years and not giving him an answer. You know, and the thing about, we were talking about the Ali Liston fights, and this happens to fans, so it happens to fighters. You can't process what your eyes are seeing, right? So when Ali beat Liston, people couldn't believe what their eyes had seen. When Ray Leonard got the decision over Hagler, people were like, but I can't process this. This isn't supposed to happen, you know, but it did happen. And after watching that fight hundreds of times, finally, I watched it once and I said, you know what, maybe Ray did win, you know, so it's up in the air. My book, I'm coming to decisions, but I'm also inviting argument.
Well, that's the thing I want to talk about, your book, the
Boxing's Greatest Controversies.
Yeah.
Blunders, blood feuds, bad decisions.
Okay, so it pretty much, the title itself pretty much explains the book, but
Right.
Can you go a little more detail of like controversy?
Sure.
Are there like, you know, the story of where Ali had to fight, who was it, where they put remember they put some crap and he was blinded for
Liston. This was the first Liston fight. What had happened was, and that's in the book, I cover that fight. So in the first Liston fight, Ali was considered an amusing sideshow. And Liston, the best odds you could get were 7-1 in favor of Liston. You couldn't get a bet on Ali. And Liston was a mob fighter. He was run by the mob out of Chicago, the outfit. And Liston had previously fought Floyd Patterson twice, knocked him out in a round. And before that, I think Wayne Bethea knocked him out in a round. Now, in previous fights against Eddie Machen and Zora Foley, when they were doing well against Liston, Liston's handlers loaded his gloves. And what they did was they put Tiger Balm on his mitts. And Tiger Balm, you know, it really hurts on your skin, even though it's aching, but they'd get it in their eyes. And it's hard to flush out. But Zora Foley and Eddie Machen were longtime pros, so they rode out the storm. Ali, or Clay at the time, is fighting Liston, and he's beating him. And after, you could see in the third round, third round, he's starting to hit him with jabs. He's busting him up, which had never happened before. Liston's got the mouse under his eye. Ali hits him a counter right hand over a lazy jab, staggers him, And now Ali's talking to him. Here comes a left hand, bang. Here comes a right hand, bang. And he was teasing him because they'd put a Lena Horne lookalike in the audience and say, if you win, she's yours. And Ali kept saying, Lena Horne's coming on with me tonight, Sonny. And he's hitting him. And Liston goes back to his corner and he's like, who told me this kid can't punch? I can't catch him. And so they crowd around him and they put Tiger Bomb. And so Ali comes out the next round. And when they go and they hug and they clinch, Liston's rubbing his gloves in Ali's face. He's got the Tiger Bomb on his shoulders. Ali's sweating profusely. And it gets into his eyes. And now he's blinking at the end of the fourth round. And when they go to the corner, Angelo takes his finger, puts it in the eye, rubs it in his own eye, and it burns. So he's taking his cloth, he's pouring water directly into his eyes, rubbing it out with a cloth, throwing the cloth away, rubbing it out with the cloth, throwing the cloth away. And Ali got up and said, cut the gloves off, show everyone that he's cheating. And Dundee said, sit down, shut up. And Barney Felix, the referee, came over and said, is he quitting? No, he's fine. He's just playing to the crowd. He's joking around. And when the round started, he said, yardstick him. In other words, use your jab, stay away. And he did. And about halfway through the fifth round, Ali's eyes started to clear. And then he gets angry. And now he's landing 5, 6, 7 punch combinations. And then they go to the sixth round and he's pounding Liston. And after the sixth round, before the seventh round, Liston quits. He spits out the mouthpiece. The first champion to quit in his corner since Jess Willard against Jack Dempsey in 1919. And they said, well, after the fight, he had a bursitis, excuse me, his shoulder. He ripped the shoulder muscle. But they said, one reporter said, but in the sixth round, Liston threw something like 12 left hooks and landed them all. How did he do that with a ripped shoulder muscle? The doctor had lied. Liston had bursitis, but nothing wrong with his left arm. He was just exhausted. He hadn't trained for a 15-round fight. He thought, I'm going to get him in a round or two. And now Ali's landing 6, 7, 8 punch combinations. And Liston just too slow. And he's getting busted up. He's bleeding. And he's getting staggered. And he's thinking, he's going to knock me out. And so he quits. And in his corner, people are saying, come on, be a man for once in your life. So after the fight, Angelo said, well, Liston had a bad shoulder and those guys are solid in the corner there, and Willie Reddish and Sam Solomon, they wouldn't do that. Milt Bailey, they would never cheat. And so when I spoke to his son, Jimmy Dundee, Jimmy said to me, Angelo knew, obviously, that Liston's a mob fighter, and that was a mob tactic. Why didn't he say it? Because the mob would have killed him. Why do you think? You can't come out and accuse the mob of cheating. They're not going to take kindly to that. So he said, no, it just happened. It was no big thing. Ali, on the other hand, said he's a mob fighter. He cheated. He tried to blind me with Tiger Bomb. The people in his corner are criminals. He's owned by the Chicago mob. And people say, why didn't they come after Ali? Well, they didn't. They tried to. After the fight, Tony Provenzano and another mob guy went back and tried to strong arm Ali into fighting for them. And they spoke to Angelo, and he said, I'm just a trainer. And he was. And then at that point, Elijah Muhammad's son comes out and says, leave Mr. Dundee alone. He's not one of your guys. You're not getting the title back. And Tony Pro says, do you know who we are? And Elijah Muhammad's son just says, we got 75,000 members who are licensed to carry guns. If you guys want to have a fight, we're happy to have it with you. But there's no way on earth you're going to strong arm our guy. Now get out of here before we kill you. And they meant it.
Isn't that the stories that a lot of people don't know, the history of boxing, how there are these things where people just think, oh, it's just two guys fighting. There's so much politics.
Yeah.
There's so many crooked deals, sometimes, especially in the olden days.
Even today.
Bad things happen to good people all the time.
Yeah. There's something that people don't know, Vito. And in the 40s and 50s and 30s, 1920s, organized crime had a control of boxing, especially with Frankie Carbo, Blinky Palermo, under the auspices of the Lucchese family. In the 1950s, Tennessee Democratic Senator Estes Kefauver, the one with the coonskin cap, opened up a Senate subcommittee investigating organized crime links in professional boxing. Most people do not know that this committee still exists. It's an ongoing committee. You can go to the American government website, you can check the committee and see recent fights that the FBI said this was definitely a fixed fight. This fight, the IBF controlled the referee and the judges, and it was decided beforehand. And that leads to one of the fights I talked about where Dave Tiberi challenged James Lights Out Tony for the middleweight title, and Tony ripped a stomach muscle in the second round, and Tony weighed 220. He had to lose 60 pounds and 6 weeks before the fight. And he did. He was drained. And so he caught Tiberi at the end of the second round, almost knocked him out, didn't. But from then to the 12th, it was all Tiberi. So the scoring, the broadcasters had it 10 rounds Tiberi, 2 rounds James Tony. Tony after said, well, he definitely won. And then they gave it to James Tony by unanimous decision. And then from his state, I believe it was Maine, Dave Tiberi's state, the senator there opened up an investigation, had the FBI look into it. And they said that the judges scoring the fight didn't have a license to score it didn't have a license to judge in the state of New Jersey. The guy that hired them, Larry Hazard, who's in the Hall of Fame, also was told that he cannot work for the IBF, but it was an IBF sanctioned fight. He was told not to hire those judges, but he did anyways. And then after the IBF said, well, we'll punish the judges. Yeah, they never punished the judges. The judges kept working right on. And basically what happened was Dave Tiberi wouldn't sign a contract with the IBF saying, if I win, I'll give all my future title defenses. You'll get this amount of money. And he said, I'm not signing a contract. If I win, I'm a free agent. And they said, well, then you're not going to win. So if he doesn't fight, he doesn't get the money. He got 35 grand. And everyone was so outraged. IBF said, we'll give you 750 grand for a rematch. And he said, no, I don't trust you. You're criminals. And that wasn't the first and only time they've done that. And they've continued to do it, as have the other sanctioning bodies. So when people say to me, well, that's not fair, you're just saying that, I said, it's a matter of public and court record. FBI got the evidence, went to court. It was found, the IBF was found guilty. It's a matter of public record now.
Yeah.
And it still goes on. So when people say to me, what was it like when the mob used to control boxing? And I always say, what do you mean used to? There's different ways of doing it now. You don't tell a judge, vote for my guy or else, like they did then. They say, listen, I'm not telling you that you should score to fight for my guy, but I'm promoting a series of fights in Barbados. And if you want to bring your wife and family and kids down for a couple months beforehand, we'll pay for everything. And so they give their guy an extra special look.
Yeah.
Or they'll say to a referee, just the other guy tends to hit rabbit punches. Can you warn him? And meanwhile, your guy's hitting rabbit punches, but he's not getting warned.
Well,
I've seen it,
um, what's his name? Michael Fabrice. He's a famous mobster that
Yes.
You know who he is.
Michael Franzese, yes.
Yeah, Michael Franzese. I'm sorry. I'm actually a member of his crew. Believe it or not, he has a crew. You could join. He's actually a very sweet man now. He's always been a nice guy, but he's never killed anybody. But anyways, he went to prison. But before he went to prison, he had a little bit of involvement with
Buddy McGirt. Yeah.
Yeah, and he remembers having a meeting with
Al Cerdo.
yeah, and there was Don King there.
Yeah.
And the stuff that they were talking about was pretty, my guy's gonna win. And Don King's like, hey, you tell me what you want to do and I'll make it happen.
Yeah, Don King, people have to remember, didn't come out of nowhere. He was hired by the Purple Gang out of Cleveland, by the mafia there. And the mafia there kept saying, every time we put somebody up front as the Don, as the Godfather, he gets arrested. So we'll put this black guy up there, and he can run boxing for us. So Don, you have to remember when Blinky Palermo came out of prison in 1970, he was 90 years old, and Don King hired him, and Palermo was in prison for murdering boxers and non-payment of taxes and threatening people. And so, that's still, he threatened, Don King threatened Larry Holmes and all these guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don King stole money from Ali, but Ali's people, the Fruit of Islam, FOI, they went before the Trevor Berbick fight and they put Don in the hospital along with his son and forced him to reinstate the original contract.
This is, yeah, I mean, you have nothing, just tons of knowledge, and we could go on forever. And we got to do another one.
Yes.
What fight do you want to watch and talk about?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd have to think about that, but
Keith.
Ali Liston, maybe first fight.
Okay, we could do that. So we'll do Ali's first fight with Liston, and maybe we'll throw in another one just in case.
Sure.
And then I'll have some more questions about the book and some other controversies, because there are tons of controversies in boxing. And
there's also a lot of humor.
Yeah.
They asked Max Baer before he fought Joe Louis, what's the definition of fear? And he said, the definition of fear is looking out across the ring at Joe Louis and knowing that he wants to go home early.
Yeah.
And during that fight, Louis knocked him down 4 times in the 3rd round. And he comes to the corner when the round's over. And his trainer, Ansel Hoffman, says, Max, you're doing great. He hasn't laid a hand on you. And Baer says, then keep your eye on the referee, because somebody's kicking the royal shit out of me.
Yeah, there were you got some boxers are comedians. I remember
they're very similar, boxing and comedy, as you know.
Yeah, well, they asked Ali when he fought. I remember this line where he fought Frazier, and he just said to he said to Dundee, he goes, hey, listen, you better make me a sandwich or something. And he's like, what, champ, what the hell are you talking about? And he goes, Frazier's he wants to dance tonight, and it's going to be a long night, so I better have something to eat. So make sure to make me a sandwich, because this is going to be a long night. And it's just beautiful things like that. Just think about that. Just when life's coming at you at 90 miles an hour in the ring.
Sonny Liston was a bully, so Ali would sit there and say, you're going out in 8 rounds, but he'd say, how many fingers am I holding up? Count them. Liston was illiterate.
Oh yeah.
He said, okay, Sonny, what's your name? Spell your name.
Yeah.
But my favorite line was by Liston. When he won the title, they asked him if he was going to march with the Freedom Riders in the South, who are being attacked by the police and their German shepherds. And Liston was from Alabama, so he thought, you can't fight racism down there. The only thing you can do is move north. So they said to him, are you going to join the Freedom Riders? And he said, no, sir. And they said, why not? And he said, because I ain't got no dog-proof ass.
Right. Yeah.
That, short, sweet, to the point.
Yeah. And isn't it where when, God, we go on forever. But one mistake Foreman did is when he went to Africa, Zaire, when he went there,
brought the shepherds. Yeah,
he brought the German shepherd, which was in Zaire, just a big no-no.
The French had been there before and controlled the Congo.
Yeah,
George told me years later that definitely was not true, but I think that came about when his dogs got loose. One of them, Diego, and started going after people, and they were like, you come to our country with your dog and you can't even keep it leashed up. Now it's chasing us.
Oh yeah.
The French did this to us. So.
Yeah. So yeah, so anyway, it's just beautiful. Well, that's not a beautiful story, but there's so many stories. But yeah, we got to do it again, Lou.
Absolutely, anytime, Vito.
It'll be a lot of fun. It's been a absolute pleasure talking to
Vice
you.
versa. It's been my privilege.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Lou Eisen, his book will be out soon,
Yeah.
and we're going to cover another fight. I'm the amazing Vito. I hope you guys had a lot of fun watching that last fight. Watch more Hearns fights. Watch more.
You
Watch
can
the
go on
old.
YouTube and put any fighter in history and they'll have fights.
Yeah, and they're just you know what? Sit back and enjoy them because sometimes the worst thing you could do is forget how great some of these people are.
That's see, when you said that, it almost made me cry because to me, my job as a historian is to reach back in time and bring these people into the forefront. We can't forget them,
Yeah,
especially the Canadians. People don't know how many great Canadian world champions there were, and we
yeah,
owe it to them. The first black man to ever be a world champion boxer was a Canadian, George Dixon. First black man to win
yeah.
it.
I got that here. Yeah, I got that. Yeah, George.
Yeah,
I
and
wanted
he
that.
invented the heavy bag. He invented the speed bag, and he was the world bantamweight champion and featherweight champion. And he was a magnificent fighter
Yeah.
from
Well, I'm
how.
going to ask you about that next time for sure.
Okay,
Okay,
absolutely.
folks, it's been a blast. Be safe, have fun, and be kind. All right.
Yes, be safe and be well and be kind to each other.
Thank you. Well said. Thank you so much. Be
My
good.
pleasure. Love you, buddy.
Love you back.